Everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Dom.
Hi.
That's Kitty. Hi, Kitty.
Hi.
We were talking about
My
we were,
very bad week.
we were talking about no good, horrible, bad weeks. Um,
Bad times.
yeah. So welcome to the show. It's the ProLib show or whatever. Don't forget to subscribe and follow
do
and
the do do the do the
hit the
YouTube
buttons
thing.
on your screen and comment and share and give it to your friends.
All the fun
Uh,
stuff.
yeah, absolutely. Kitty, I have news.
And what's the news?
We have a woke Pope.
Is he more woke than the last woke pope?
Sure.
Fingers
That's what we're going
crossed.
to talk about tonight. Is
Oh
can
man,
popes even be woke at this
I'm
point?
gonna I'm gonna have to dig deep into those former Catholic It's been a long time since I was a practicing Catholic, but
So,
let's go.
for anyone who's new, I am Anglican. Kitty is a former Catholic. If you don't know what Anglican means, I grew up Episcopalian, but there's different types of Anglican. But
Episcopalian's Catholic light.
basically, Episcopalian is like the closest to Catholic. That's what I was going to say. Like, you go to a Catholic mass and you go to an Episcopalian mass, they're basically the same. There's a couple little things in there, but it's basically the same.
It's like the wish.com version of a Catholic mass.
Right. We're Timu Catholics. But one of the interesting things is there's a prayer that's said every week during Mass. For the church itself. It's a prayer for the church, for the people in the church. And in the Catholic version, it finishes and the Pope in the Vatican. But in the Episcopal Church, you don't say the Pope, you call him the Archbishop of the Vatican, because the Episcopalian Church doesn't recognize a Pope. They don't recognize that the Pope.
Yeah, really, only the Catholics do that.
So what I want to talk about tonight is not just Pope Leo XIV, who I am thankful seems to be someone who is not going to roll over to the fascists. Very thankful about that.
Not like the one that, back in the 30s that kind of was with the not nice people.
Right. But at the same time, can a pope even be woke? We're going to talk about some religious stuff tonight, is my point. And kind of the history of the Catholic Church. We're not going to like go down like, Pope, Bill the 10th said blah, blah, blah in 1720. Like, we're not doing that. But just kind of both of us grew up. You grew up directly in Catholic. I grew up in Timu Catholicism. So,
I'm just stealing that forever. It's Timu Catholic from now on.
But as Titan says, all humans are popes. Yeah. So, listen, I think, and I said this on Blue Sky, but I want to say it more clearly here because Blue Sky, you only get like 300 characters. The celebration today should not be misconstrued as a celebration of a pope. Like, yay, there's a new pope. I don't give a fuck about a pope. I don't give, like, I mean, him as a person, like, he holds the same value that I give all human life. Like, all humans are precious to me because all life is precious. But I'm not, like, happy that there's a pope, whether or not the pope is woke. Right, woke. The Catholic Church has a very long history of hiding and abetting child sexual abuse. Calling me, right? Sorry, somebody called me, and this could not be at a worse moment. A long history of of hiding and abetting child sexual abuse, of disenfranchising reproductive health care, whether that's like abortion for people with wombs or gender affirming care for trans children and adults,
and birth control.
Yeah, birth control, right? Very anti-birth control in all its forms. Lots of bodily autonomy issues. Let's just say,
all of them,
right? All of the bodily autonomy issues. A celebration of patriarchal structures, not just religious, but also in many cases throughout the centuries, there were times when popes and bishops and cardinals and whatnot propped up leaders they knew to be not good for the people.
Yeah, very not good.
Very not good. So, so my point is, I want to preface this at the beginning of the show because we're going to be saying good things about the Pope, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're saying good things about the Catholic Church. And I don't want to have to start every statement out in the show tonight like, by the way, I know that Catholics are bad on all of these issues. However, like, so I'm just doing the preface at the beginning of the show. We recognize how horrible the Catholic Church has been for basically every marginalized group that's not a white European male. Okay. We know.
So not so fun fact. My grandmother, the
Huh?
same grandmother that was a child that was in one of the internment camps in Germany and came to the United States to survive, she got excommunicated from the Catholic Church
Right.
because she divorced her abusive husband, my grandfather.
Of course.
So, I mean, granted, this would have been back in like, the
But that's
late 60s, early 70s.
right. And so that's my point. Like when we say woke Pope, and I'm glad that there's a woke Pope, it doesn't mean that suddenly I'm a big, huge Catholic Church fan, right? Like let's recognize that it's really kind of a weirdo cult where like they pray to the
It's a death
Virgin
cult.
Mary and
It's a death cult. All Christianity is a death cult.
Right. And so when we're talking tonight in positive terms about the Pope, please don't misconstrue that into us being positive generally about the history of the Catholic Church. We recognize the
It's
vast
possible
problems.
it's possible to compliment some things while still criticizing and not agreeing overall with the entirety
Correct.
of the thing.
Right. Right. Go ahead. It's all you know.
Okay. So yeah, like again, as we were saying, lots and lots of issues with the Catholic Church, but the fact is we are kind of backsliding into the 30s with the way the United States is going. We're goose stepping towards full fascist authoritarianism, which is terrifying. But back when there was the mustache man in the 30s, the Pope at that time actually was very anti-Semitic and also was kind of okay with that. So
Yes.
when they were selecting the Pope, this current Pope, Pope Leo, there was some consideration of whether it was going to, because there were two camps. There were the let's go Francis route, where we're going to be a bit more progressive and kind of like keep in that same vein of, okay, we're not going to just condemn queer people. We're just going to be kind of like a live and let live, just kind of like, hand wave it away instead of being as bad, be a
Right.
little bit more open to science and climate change and those kinds of things. So keeping in that vein, or if they wanted to do an about face and select a much more conservative pope that would have been similar to the pope that we had back in the 30s, which I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head,
Me
but it
either.
doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
So the pope that they did select,
Pope
American,
Hero was his name.
he is the first American, which a lot of American Catholics were kind of shook at because they thought we would get like an Asian and an African pope before an American pope.
Yep.
But he's from Chicago, which means that no ketchup on hot dogs is now canonical law.
That is
You
kind
cannot have ketchup on hot dogs.
Does
Now
he
it's
have to sit
canonical
on the
law.
little Pope seat before he? No, that's the rules.
But so he has said some things, the new pope has said some things that are kind of like in the past about gay people, but supposedly he has kind of evolved a bit more on his views, and it has been seen that he is a more progressive and more in the Francis line of things rather than backsliding to the more conservative style papacy that was a possibility depending on how this played out.
Well, and he was part of that group 15 years ago or whatever that was I guess eager to help cover up a lot of the child sexual abuse history in the church. So, hopefully his views have evolved, as you said. Um, especially on these things, or he's more like Pope Francis, where he's just gonna be like,
Yeah.
uh,
I
uh.
have a feeling that's likely where it's going to be.
Yeah, is that right? That's what I'm talking about. Yes,
One thing I will say that was a little bit nice, again, like asterisk,
sure,
when he gave his speech to when he addressed the crowd after being selected, he spoke in I believe it was Italian, Latin, and Spanish. He did not speak in English. So it
yes,
very much, even as an American, is kind of a gesture of saying, like, I'm going to be for, like, the world, like,
right,
which I thought was kind of nice. Again, asterisks.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, I want to go back to what Titan said here. I knew a woman 40 years ago whose father punched her in the face because she and her husband were over for dinner, and she was pregnant, and her water broke at the dinner table.
Christ on a cracker.
Because it was sexual, because that was some sort of sexual sign or something. We maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this Pope would be like, don't do that. Right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, probably.
again, I think one of the things we've touched on the show in the past couple of,
However,
months,
yeah.
has been that while we all want dramatic progressive change forward, rarely is that how the world has worked in history. Rarely has it been large steps. Like the
Unless it was
civil
violent.
when you think about the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964, right?
Mhm.
What happened in 1864?
Yeah.
The Civil War ended. So it took 100 years from the end of the Civil War to the Civil Rights Act, right? So, and everybody behave, you have the pictures of 1960 of Ruby Bridges, 6-year-old
Mhm.
kid walking into school and being screamed at. That was 4 years before the Civil Rights Act
Like
passed,
grown-ass adults, like,
by grown-ass adults screaming at her for just being a black kid that's going to school. Like, that's what they were, just
speaking
angry at her that her skin was
speaking
dark.
of that,
Well, hold on,
I
hold on. I want to finish my point first.
okay,
I
go
want to
ahead.
finish my point first. So we have to recognize that progressive change, when the change happens, it can feel like it's very dramatic. Like, oh my God, when women got the right to vote, it was like super big. But you know who was also pushing for women to have the right to vote? Thomas Jefferson's daughter in like the 18 teens, right? And it was 100 years later ish when women actually got the right to vote. So these types of small steps forward, while they're not nearly big, I would love, Pope, I don't know, who's like the wokest, like Pope AOC, right? Like, sure, would we love Pope AOC?
Pope Bernie.
Absolutely. Sure, that'd be great. But a Pope Leo ain't bad.
I mean, it's basically we're trying to, like, have a ratchet. So we want to make these small steps forward, and then we kind of want to lock them in so we can't backslide. Because
Mm,
right now we're backsliding,
yes.
and so sometimes we need to be thankful for the small steps and for the tiny incrementalism, which I don't like incrementalism because it does, like, dishearten people, and it's
It
not
does.
enough change,
Nope.
quickly enough, but it is still generally moving in the right direction as opposed to the wrong direction.
Well, and what you have to recognize is that every time we take a step forward, it's into the face of all of the people that are actively pushing us back. It's not like we're only taking a step forward because that's all we're willing to do. You've got people on the other side pushing back as much as possible. So even when you get little tiny steps, you have to be like, hey, it's a little tiny step. So it's not
But it's still
enough.
in the right direction.
It's not enough. It's not nearly enough, but it's a step. And, it's generational. As much as I don't like him, one of the things that Thomas Jefferson wrote later on in his life, to the same daughter that actually wanted women's suffrage, he wrote to her about, it was one of the few times where he talked publicly about how he tried to outlaw the international slave trade with the Declaration of Independence. There was a bunch in there about it that got taken out. And Thomas Jefferson, of course, we talked about him on the show for his horrible racist. I'm not defending him in any way, shape, or form.
Grapist.
Right. But what he wrote to her in this letter was that basically my generation has failed at abolition. We didn't do it. There were those of us who wanted to do some things because we recognized slavery was wrong, but we weren't capable of doing it. And now it's your generation's turn to pick up from where he was like, these aren't the words that he used, of course, because he wrote in very flowery language. But basically, my generation wasn't. I think he says aware. I can't remember exactly the word he uses, but basically wasn't aware enough of how to put these changes forward. And it's your turn to figure out how. And that's kind of what these little moves are like. Like, they're frustrating. I want them to be bigger. And at the same time, it's like, well, like Zarok brought up, I mean, he's a guy that defended some child sexual
Horrible
abuse
things
in the church.
Yeah.
Horrible things. But as we said here on the show, we cannot beat fascism by ourselves. We aren't enough. So the only way we're going to beat fascism is to align with everyone that's willing to fight back against fascism, which means we're going to be on the same side as some people that under normal circumstances would be like, no, you aren't an ally. No, you don't get to come here. But we can't win without them.
It's the safety in numbers thing, where it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend,
Right.
We don't necessarily have to be friends for real and outside of the extreme extenuating circumstances that are the current times and the backslide into fascism and authoritarianism. There are, people that I vehemently disagree with that might even be against my rights to exist as I am,
Sure.
but they also don't like fascism. And I'm like, okay, so on this one thing, we can agree and we can push back together. But
Right.
then once the threat is over, then no, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, like the boys that
we don't have a choice.
Exactly. The boys that stormed Normandy, do you think they'd have been like, well, I'm not getting in this boat with this guy because he doesn't like, what I like politically? Like, no, it was like, no, we have to beat these. We have to
end the threat.
We have to end the threat of this. And it's like, as much as, I don't know that it's as dramatic, but they do see themselves at war with us. When Elaine, oh my God, I just forgot her name. The woman that got picked up and taken out of Lawler's town hall the other night. Her name just flew out of my head. Anyway, when she asked, all she did was ask a question. She said, "What's your red line with Trump? Like, what's your red line?" There were people in that crowd shouting to kill her. It's on video. You can hear them. That's where we are. That's not some other place. That's where we are. So when the Pope is like, yeah, I'm going to push back against fascism, you're like, thanks, Pope. Thanks, bud. Thanks. Great. Yeah. Pope, you and me right here, bud.
Same side, absolutely. On this issue.
Because we don't have time for litmus tests. We can
make our party much smaller. It doesn't have to be as big tent of a thing once the immediate threat of fascism is over. Then we can break up into smaller groups and we can fight all we want to try to 100%. Get what we need. But until the immediate threat to everyone's civil liberties, because they are blackbagging Americans and putting them in extrajudicial prisons. They are deporting American children with cancer.
Exiling. They are exiling them. Yes.
That's true. It is state-sponsored human trafficking.
Yes.
And we need all of the people on our side. Like, I would like homophobes and even TERFs, if they are against fascism, I am willing to set everything else aside to deal with the immediate threat. Because if your house is burning down and you also, have a fucking like flood, it's like, okay, well, let's deal with the burning house that's going to destroy everything, and then we can plug the leaks in the floor that are making the floor soggy.
Absolutely.
So like we can compartmentalize and we can be like, look, I vehemently disagree with you on all of these things, but there is a fundamental greater good here that threatens everybody, not just my group. Granted, my group is one of the first ones targeted, but
100%.
being queer, being trans, being disabled, like I got the trifecta, baby.
And
I'm
hashtag
the
protect the
undesirable.
dolls. Hashtag protect the dolls, but go on.
Yes. Protect the dolls. Like,
Protect the
God,
dolls.
the Merc of freedom people, uber capitalist. And I was like, well, your child doesn't need 36 dolls or 250 pencils. Like,
I don't
this
listen, that's a whole other show. Okay.
fair enough. But the fact of the matter is I will work in coalition with people that I would otherwise be vehemently against.
Yes.
Even the crunchy granola anti-vax moms, I will go to the mat fighting against them and telling them how stupid they are, because of them refusing to vaccinate their children. However, if they are also against fascism and they're also against a registry for autistic children, we can work together to stop that. And then I can argue the idiocy of not vaccinating your children after the immediate threat has ended.
And I know we talked about that in the last show, but we're going to talk about it
Yes.
again tonight
Fair
in a
enough.
minute. Because there's a tie-in I want to get into. But other kitty, remember there's two kitties. All right.
Yes.
So, there's two kitty. I don't know. Kitty says, true story. I was talking to a family member that I was worried about Hispanic family members who are citizens that will be picked up. And they answered, oh, well. So yeah,
It's a cult.
woke Pope.
It's a cult.
Woke Pope. That and I think we talked about that with my dad a little bit while he was on. That what you have post biblical Christianity. The Bible no longer matters. Nothing that is written in the Bible, nothing that Jesus said, or that Moses said, or that Noah said, or that I don't know, Elisha, Peter, Paul, Mary, John, Ringo. Nothing that any of them said matters anymore.
There have been priests that have had MAGA congregants come up to them and ask, why are you spouting this woke shit at service when all they were doing was reading the Sermon on the Mount?
Yeah.
Or reading the words of Jesus, their
There are
supposed
people,
savior.
when you like Jesus, okay, this is my favorite Bible story. I've told it before. You guys know the story, but I'm telling it anyway. Jesus and the apostles are walking by these Pharisees, and the Pharisees would do this thing where they would talk about what they felt was the most important commandment, and they would gnash their hair and tear at their clothes and tear their hair out and talk about the time that they had violated this commandment and how sorry they were, and it was very performative. And Jesus, the apostles are walking by, and Peter's like, well, that's weird. And Jesus is like, yeah, it's weird. And Peter's like, well, Rabbi, what is the most important commandment anyway? Like, what's the best one? And Jesus is like, well, there's two. Put God first and love your neighbor as yourself, and all the other ones will follow along if you commit to those two. And the Pharisees got pissed. They got so pissed. They're like, how can you say that they're those two commandments? How can you do? So you don't care about lying, Jesus? You don't care about stealing, Jesus? You don't care about coveting your neighbor? Is that what you're saying? And Jesus is like, no, it's not what I'm saying. And it's exactly like MAGA today. Because if you went up to MAGA and you said the only two things that matter is putting God first and loving each other, because if you do that, you'll be a moral person, they'd get fucking pissed at you.
And say that's some woke shit.
That's some woke shit, bro. Jesus told me that I need to tell you that you're a dick. That would be, I don't know. They don't have convictions. You cannot engage in moral arguments with them because they don't have morals. They aren't centered on morals. They're centered on 1950s, 60s. Well, I guess there was some of it before that, but it got very popular among the KKK in the 1950s and 1960s, which is the Great Replacement Theory, which is that communities of color are having more babies than white communities. And so over time, all of the white communities are going to be overrun with people of color. And we can't let that happen. That's it. That's it. That is their religion. That's what their religion boils down to. And so if you're feeding a child, or if you have a program in place that feeds children, and it feeds children from marginalized communities just as much as it, or more, God forbid, than children from white communities, you have violated the only tenet of morality that they care about. That's it. That's all
Yet
that's all they
there
give
are
any shit
more
about.
white people on public assistance than there are people of color.
But it doesn't matter. But if there was one, then
Fair
it's
enough. And yet
immoral. And
these are the same people that will say that I cannot be moral as an atheist, that you can't be moral without God. And it's like, but you don't even listen to your holy book anymore.
right.
Like,
Well, and the issue is, it's like the whole "what is a woman" thing. Well, all of their arguments are just like the "what is a woman" question, because what is a woman starts from a place of disingenuity. It starts at a place that gender ideology exists. Gender ideology doesn't exist. It's a completely made up term. There's no such thing as gender ideology. There's gender, which is a social construct, but it's not an ideology. It's just the fact that gender exists. It's just science, and that there's gender is a spectrum and non-binary. That's it. That's gender, and it's not a belief. It's not a theory. That's what gender. This is what we understand gender to be. However, that violates the moral center of magnanity.
I don't know. Okay, deep dish Eucharist, 10 out of 10.
Hell yeah. Somebody said earlier that communion wafers were now going to be far thicker and served with sauce.
Yeah, Chicago style dogs, man.
Hey,
just lay some Eucharist things on top for a little added crunch.
yeah. The great and wonderful Sinister Porpoise says, "I'm so glad we stopped Meals on Wheels because the starving senior citizens were keeping Musk from hiring more people to level his path of exile." 2 characters. It's true. It's true. Why was Granny eating that mac and cheese when Elon's trying to get to level 100? I don't know. I've never played Path of Exile, so I don't know what the.
Me either. So I couldn't say.
Yeah, Andreas. I mean, it is virtue signaling. But it's performance. It's exactly like the Pharisees were described in the Bible, and the Pharisees were the bad guys. Well, they were the antagonists, I guess, but the Pharisees weren't the heroes of the story.
No.
The woke dude with the beard was, who hung out with prostitutes and tax collectors and talked about like forgiveness and empathy and just loving each other just because we're all humans.
Yeah.
I said on Blue Sky earlier that the all Catholics now have to wear white socks and blue hats. So I don't know. It's going to be a thing. I don't know what to tell you. It's somebody.
I'm still technically considered a Catholic because, I went through all of the things. I, baptized, communion, confirmation,
yeah.
Even marriage. I went through all of it.
Right.
Yeah, no, my ex-husband was a Catholic, so we had.
Oh, so you had a whole Catholic ceremony?
Yes.
Were you Roman Catholic or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The priest who confirmed me in the Episcopal Church was a former Roman Catholic. So I'm as Timu Catholic as you get, baby.
Yeah. But no, I did everything.
Porpoise?
The only thing is last rites would be the only of the main milestones of Catholicism that I wouldn't have made. That, and there's no way in hell I was going to become a nun.
Oh no, I could not see you as a nun. You would be a nun for maybe 5 seconds. They'd be like, no, get her out of here. This is not gonna work. Okay, porpoise. Now, guys, I have very limited knowledge of how Chicagoland works. So all of the knowledge that I'm about to spew to you is probably wrong, but it's what I read other Chicagoans saying, Chicagoites,
I think it's
what
Chicagoans.
Chicagoans saying on Blue Sky. Okay. This is my understanding. Likely it's wrong. The Pope is from Naperville, which would seem to indicate that he would be a Sox fan and not a Cubs fan. Now, I don't know how true that is. Okay, Mo, that is what I heard. Being on the South Side, he'd be a White Sox fan. And again, I don't know any. I've been to Chicago a couple of times, but I'm in no way. I loved it.
Hey,
That
that's
was beautiful.
Mo's a friend of mine, and that's his neck of the woods. So
Sure.
I will take his word for it.
I will take your word for it. That is my understanding, is that he's a Sox fan, or that from where he lived, it would seem to indicate that he's a Sox fan. Also, he's a virgin. And we know that most Sox fans are virgins. So listen, that was a great 5-minute setup for that joke. Okay. I set that up fucking fantastically.
Okay, but then you have people like me, like originally from Worcester, Massachusetts, and I don't like the Red Sox. I actually wrote for the Yankees, even though I don't really follow sports, but because of my uncle, I was the Yankees fan instead of a Sox fan.
True story. When I first moved to Asheville, I did Uber for a couple of months. Just I needed to learn my way around, and I had an SUV at the time, so it worked. Anyway, I'm from Florida. Everybody knows I'm from Florida, and I'm a Tampa Bay sports fan. All the Tampa Bay teams I like. Although I'm a little pissed at my Buccaneers right now because of the John Gruden situation, but neither here nor there. So it was a couple of years ago. It was the playoffs, and car full of Yankees fans. Bunch of Yankees guys gets in the car, and I'm like, oh hell. And they were in the playoffs, of course. And I said, so what are you guys in town for? And the guy in the passenger seat kind of looks at me. He's like in a Yankees hat and a Yankees jersey. He's like, for the game. I'm like, is it like cricket or
you're
pool?
such an asshole.
And he's like, the Yankees. And I was like, oh, what sport is that? He's like, it's baseball. I was like, oh, I watch a lot of baseball. Are they like an expansion team, or are they new? And he's just he's like, the New York Yankees. And I was like, I'm sorry, I only follow Tampa Bay sports. So he's just like, oh, so you're messing with me just because you beat us. And I'm like, yes, I am.
So I actually saw the Red Sox play one time, and it was in Tampa when they were playing against Tampa. I went with a bunch of my friends from Embry-Riddle, and we went down to Tampa for the game. So I haven't seen the Yankees play, but I've seen the Red Sox play. Although I do have a friend that works at the stadium. So if I am in Massachusetts and I want to see a Red Sox game, I could go.
Well, but why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
Maya, we are talking about them in relation to woke Pope. Okay.
Yeah.
What is important is that we understand everything about woke Pope. And here's the things we know. Virgin, White Sox fan. I think that's it. I think it's the only two things we've uncovered so far, but we're working on it.
Probably prefers deep dish pizza and Chicago style dogs.
I was told, again, by somebody on Blue Sky who claims to be Chicagoan, and I believe that they are. They told me that deep dish is a joke that they pull on outsiders. So, I don't know. I don't know. That's what I was told today. Porpoise says, I once told my ex-brother-in-law that the Phillies had a better chance of winning the Super Bowl than the Eagles. That would have been funny a few years ago. Of course.
Yeah.
The Eagles got good because Jalen Hurts is an amazing guy. Not just an amazing athlete, but if you ever hear him talk, like, the guy's brilliant. Yeah, unfortunately. Oh, okay. So we're going to move on to the second part of this story, which builds on what we talked about in the last episode, all about RFK Jr.'s autism database. So it has been now confirmed. The National Institutes of Health will use information from Medicare and Medicaid, to quote, determine the cause of autism.
That's not how that works.
And here's a direct quote from HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I literally wanted to throw things. Quote, we're using this partnership to uncover the root causes of autism and other chronic diseases. Autism is, of course, not a disease in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing to uncover. There's nothing to discover. I mean, I guess you could do like some genetic examination to figure out why people think different ways, have different cognitive responses to different stimuli, but that doesn't mean that they have a disease.
Yeah, and things like ADHD and autism do tend to run in families. You have a higher likelihood of having an autistic child if, the parent has
So do green eyes.
Yeah, same. But it's not a disease.
But it's not a disease. Like my green eyes aren't a disease.
It works different. Their brain is wired a little bit different, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
And just the dehumanization of, these kids will never pay taxes. They'll never use the toilet unassisted. My 11-year-old is fully potty trained. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And a couple of people are bringing up eugenics. Of course, we did that show with Mowdy.
Yes.
All about the history of eugenics, which is why we did it, because we were talking about this a lot.
Yeah.
Xerox says this is Nazi eugenics list. That's all it is. Correct. And here's why I'm bringing this up into relation to woke Pope. Okay. A woke Pope who will call that bullshit out is an ally we're about to really motherfucking need.
Yes.
So when we say that, yeah, there's these shaky things in his history that we don't like, that we don't agree with. He doesn't seem to be in favor of eugenics. Seems to be an ally on eugenics. And since we're now in eugenics land, we need allies that are like, hey, eugenics is bad. Let's not do eugenics.
Let's not do eugenics. Let's not turn undesirables into biodiesel. And this Pope would be like, let's not do that.
God. Oh my God. Oh my God. You reminded me of something that I saw today.
You're welcome.
Do you remember our friend Curtis Yarvin?
Unfortunately.
Okay. Curtis Yarvin thinks that Doge is moving too fast and too recklessly, and gave it scorn today. Curtis Yarvin, who is the architect of all this bullshit that we're going through, it's like, oh yeah, no, this is too much. That happened today. And I'm so glad it flew out of my mind with all the Pope stuff, everything else that happened. By the way, another thing that I posted on Blue Sky right before we went live, the Justice Department has opened a criminal fraud investigation into New York Attorney General Letitia James.
Why?
Because why do you
reasons?
Think? Why do you think? So my point is that the people who are in charge right now are literal Nazis. Yarvin, I don't know that Yarvin is technically a Nazi. I think Yarvin is certainly anti-progressivism, but I don't think that Yarvin was literally like, you can put him in ovens. Now he made that biodiesel joke, but he's never, but everything that he's talked about since has just been about dismantling the federal government. That's one thing that that's all he's championed since then. So I don't know that he's like pro-eugenics. I don't know that he's anti-eugenics, but he hasn't made any statements that make me think that he is pro-eugenics, at least that I've seen. Maybe I've missed something. You can link in the chat if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we can still call him a fascist, Maya.
Sure. 100% fascist. Not saying he's not fascist, just saying he's not a eugenicist. Not saying he's not. Let me be quite clear. Absolutely a fascist. Just saying not necessarily eugenicist. What we are at the point where it's like, okay, well, who's against eugenics though? All right, maybe you liked the other stuff. Maybe you liked firing all the federal workers. Maybe you liked,
Black
tearing
bagging
families apart.
brown
And
people.
sure, maybe you liked the indentured slavery of El Salvador and the human rights violations of Libya and those other prisons. Maybe you're even in favor of an autism registry because you actually do believe, because you're just confused and you're wrong, but maybe you're just confused. You do think that there is some underlying disease in the body, some bacteria or virus or something that causes things like ADHD and autism. You're wrong, but maybe it's not literally you don't think that those people need to be like,
pruned from the gene pool.
Right? And now you're like, well, wait, hold on. Listen, that's where we are. We're at that point now. We're at the point where you don't put a database of people together unless you want to track them and do things to them. That's
one
the only
way or
reason
another.
Right. Now, it may be, there are positive reasons to have databases of people. Maybe you're tracking them because they all like lemon flavored lollipops. And you're like, you know what? I have 1 billion lemon flavored lollipops and I'm going to send them out to everyone that I can find that likes lemon flavored lollipops. So I need a database of people so that I can monthly mail them a lemon flavored lollipop, right? Hey, that's a great idea to have it's a great reason to have a database. If you're having a database of people who think in a way that you don't like, and you just want to track all of their medical information, by the way, you shouldn't even have that.
HIPAA, like it's a HIPAA violation.
It's an everything violation. There are no positive reasons that this database needs to exist. And I guarantee it that they are using some sort of generative AI to make all kinds of judgments about these people.
Yeah.
Sure of it. So that they can easily route them into camps that they won't try to escape from. I don't know. Like, I don't know what what their end game is with that.
So, and it's not going to be just with autism. Like, Dom, you went to high school in Florida, like me. They have you read Robin Cook's Toxin, the book about the doctor whose child got E. coli from the meat that wasn't properly processed and died, and he does an investigation and finds out there's doing like really shady, sketchy shit behind the scenes.
I don't know if I read that in high school or college. I've read it, but I don't remember if that was in high school or not.
So it was in my high school reading list, and he became one of my favorite authors because doctor turned author, like, brilliant. He has another book. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but this was before like AI was a thing. But the insurance company would basically look at the data for all these different patients, and you would have a person who was, say, 28 years old, still in the prime of their life, and they'd go in for a minor knee surgery, something that they would have been in and out, and then they're dropping dead. And the coroner, which is the person you're following the story through, is like noticing all these otherwise, young people that shouldn't be dropping like flies. And they realize the insurance company is essentially, they've determined that this person, because they're a smoker or a heavy drinker, they are a risk to their profits. So they are taking the opportunity to axe them while having minor procedures done to remove them from the risk pool, so to speak. And again, that book was 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, but now with AI and the databases that they're trying to make, that might not be too far from, and it wouldn't be the insurance companies necessarily doing it, but the government, which is even more terrifying when you think about it.
Well, one of my favorite channels I talk about a lot, Red Letter Media, great guys. It was during, I think it was during the review of the new Independence Day sequel. They were talking about how implausible alien invasion movies are. He was like, if you had rats in your house, do you build a bunch of other little rats to go like shoot at the rats, or do you just put out poison? Well, you just put out poison because then the rats eat the poison. We're the rats. If they decide that they want to get rid of us in mass, it's not going to be in ways that are that they would be easily caught at, or that they would endanger themselves to do. They want a certain amount of chaos, sure, but they don't need a lot of it to justify the things that they want to do, which they believe they need to do because the only religion that they care about is great replacement theory. They don't care what the Bible says. They don't care what the Quran says or the Tao Te Ching or any other religious I can't even think of any other religious text. They don't care about any of that. What they care about is great replacement theory. And either you are helping them preserve the white race or you are not. And that's it. And so the theory that, you're going to, in some way, shape, or form, influence them by saying, oh, well, you obviously don't believe in Jesus if you're not following the Pope, or if you're not, listening to what Jesus said. And they don't give a shit. If they cared, then they would be.
Mm-hmm.
If these people cared about Christianity as a moral center, then they would be behaving according to the tenets of Christianity.
Yes.
Without you calling them out or me calling them out. So it's like we're so far past calling them out because it doesn't matter. It's about the purity of their and it doesn't even make any sense because there is no such thing. We are all descended from people in Africa. Like, it's not like there are two different races. That's why I hate races. Like, we're not different races. We're the same race. We're literally the same race. We're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all descended from a woman in Africa. Like, that's
we
where
might
we're
have
all
some phenotypical differences, but all in all,
yeah, I mean, there's
we're
some
the same.
small, like you can tell, normally you can tell like a Japanese person from a Korean person, like, because you can look at their face shape and what, like, oh, okay, I mean, like, I'm not saying that there's no difference in ethnicity. I'm saying that there's no or national origin. I'm saying that there is no race. Like, we're all one race. We're all the same race. And the Great Replacement theory exists on the premise that there are literally different races, that Asian people are literally different from sub-Saharan Africans, that are literally different from Western Europeans. Like, that is their viewpoint of the world. And it doesn't matter what science says.
Yeah.
You can show them all the science in the world. It will never faze them. Jesus himself could come down and be like, listen, you're all the same and you should love each other. And they'd be like, who is this asshole? So
sounds like some woke bullshit to me.
Sounds like some woke bullshit to me, because all that matters to them is the preservation of a patriarchal system led by white men. That's wealthy white men.
Yet their Lord and Savior was not a white man. So,
No, he was a poor Jewish gentleman. Yeah, Zarok, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's all made up, right? It's all pretend. It's all pretend. Gender is pretend. Ethnicity is pretend. National, it's all pretend. Like, there are people that live in certain areas that tend to resemble one another. Sure, but there's no genetic difference on any level that matters, right? It's like a 0.002% variation in your genetics that determines like the melanin in your skin and your eye color and stuff. Like, it's a very, very small part of your DNA. And it doesn't change anything about, fundamentally how your body works or anything. But
It's
to
like a blood
them,
transfusion. As long as the blood type is the same, it does not matter if you take the blood from an Asian person and transfuse
right,
it into a black person. As long
100%.
as it's the right blood type, it
Right.
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Like there's 8 types of blood types in humans, but dogs have like 30 or something. Like the idea that any of this, fundamentally makes you a different person. Because when you and I are talking about fundamental differences in people, we're talking about like hair color, eye color. What they're talking about is intellectual capacity, the capacity for leadership. They truly believe that only white men have the true capacity for leadership in any kind of social structure. It's what they believe fundamentally, and that the darkened melanin in your skin is a sign that you are incapable of doing so.
Yeah. Which we talked about this with Maudi, where it's like usually if you do see any differences in overall academic achievement, it's because you're not inputting as much resources into like inner city or poor or communities where there are higher proportionality of poor and
Sure.
people of color. They don't have the best schools, so if you're not giving the same resources in, you're not going to get the same benefit out. If you
Right.
have the wealthy white kid who, because property taxes fund schools, they have the access to all the best things. All the kids get laptops and they get all this, state of the art stuff. You invest that, you're going to have higher like academic achievement. But if you have, a building here where you've got 4 kids sharing a single book in the classroom and they don't have access to maybe even the internet, then yeah, okay, you're not investing the same resources, so you're
Yep.
not going to get the same output. You can still have kids that go above and beyond, but those would be the outliers, and it has nothing to do with the children themselves. It has to do with not investing in them.
Well, and that's what, and Zarok brought up a great point. I just wanted to put that on the screen while I felt like that backed up your point. But that's what, well, I mentioned Ruby Bridges earlier. That was a lot of the argument against Ruby Bridges attending the same school as white children, was that white people had paid the taxes at that school to make sure that that school was the best school. And I don't know how good that school was according to the parameters. I have no clue whatsoever. One of the arguments was that this black child from a poor area, and again, I don't know if Ruby actually came from a poor area. That's just what the arguments were at the time. Some of the arguments, letting black kids from poor areas, neighborhoods, into these schools that white people had paid for was giving them an unfair advantage, or was, putting them in a position they didn't deserve. Basically, that was the arguments that these people were making against a 6-year-old kid that just wanted to go to school. She just wanted to go to school. She didn't know. She just wanted to like
And these
hang
were
out.
grown-ass people screaming at a child,
Right.
just like that one woman that, went off on, I heard,
Oh,
that
the lady from the other
the
day that
5-year-old,
raised like
yeah,
$1 million. Yeah.
the 5-year-old, that they believe he might be neurodivergent. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, if I'm at the park and a little 5-year-old kid steals something from my diaper bag, I mean, one, I would look for, the parent that that child, is with. And if not,
Sure.
you can calmly just say, look, you shouldn't be taking things that don't belong to you. May I have it back, please? You can have a conversation because kids don't have like a fully developed sense of right and wrong, especially not at 5 years old.
Right.
I stole a candy bar when I was
Did
like
too.
5 years
Did
old.
too. My mom made me take it back and apologize.
Yeah, and exactly, same thing happened to me
Yeah.
because I'm just like, "Well, I want the candy bar," and my mom said no, so I'm just gonna I want
Right.
the
Of
candy
course.
bar.
Then I'll just
And it's
take
like,
it.
it's right there, I might as well
Yeah.
just take
They have a
it,
whole box of them.
Exactly, there's plenty, there's enough for everybody,
Right.
So, like, that's how my little 5-year-old mind worked. It's like, there's plenty there, so I can just have one. I'm not being greedy, I'm not being selfish because it's just the one. So you can have a conversation.
Sorry. Sinister, you're brilliant. I'm sorry. That's
Okay,
heterodivergent.
that is brilliant.
That's
I
very
like
funny.
that.
That's very
So
funny. I'm
so we've
sorry.
got
Go ahead.
Timu Catholic and hetero-divergent.
Team of Catholic
Uh,
and heterodivergent. Hey,
we've
welcome to
coined 2
ProLib
new
Show. You
terms.
learn things.
Yes, 2 new terms that we've coined. So,
Right.
not only did this woman, like, scream racial slurs at a 5-year-old, whether the child is neurodivergent or not, they're fucking 5, okay? Like,
Exactly.
they're 5 years old. They don't understand right from wrong, not fully. They might have a general concept
Sure, everyone has a
depending,
moral compass. Yeah.
but all in all, like, it's a conversation. And this was a parent. Like, she had a child of her own. She should know better.
Yeah. Well,
But
she first said it to the child, then she said it to the parent when the parent called her out and started recording her. And then I think she said it to the child again.
yeah. And then on the fundraising site, the right-wing fundraising site, I forget what it's called, but it's like GoFundMe, but for heartless, like, conservative
Yeah, I
pricks.
don't know. It's like
Um,
givememoney.net or
she
something.
uh she straight up said in one of the comments, "I called him what he was."
And see, that is to me why they're so mad about a woke pope.
Yeah.
Because to them, because they're post-biblical, their religious leaders, when they go into church, probably use all kinds of slurs with them in conversation. Maybe not from the pulpit, maybe from the pulpit. I don't know. I don't go to those churches, so I don't know what the fuck they do. Maybe not from the pulpit, but definitely will use it in, conversationally with them. And so what this woman has done is given performative bigotry, right?
Mhm.
It's not just bigotry, it's performative bigotry. She is making a show of her bigotry and then using that bigotry to grift off of people. I mean, there's no why
Over
would you give
$700,000 last I checked.
last I checked, yeah, it was coming up on 1,000,000. Um,
And they had to turn comments off, because so many people were just writing slurs in the comments on the fundraiser.
so again, if the Pope has a couple of questionable things in his past, um, this is where we are, right?
Yeah.
So
We
yeah,
can
we're
have that
gonna
conversation when we're not, screaming racial slurs at
100%,
children and getting $1
100%.
million for
Go
doing
look on the
so,
channel. We probably had the conversation
and
100
and
times.
making registries to round up
Sure.
undesirables.
Oh, we'll be back there. Well, 100%, we'll be back.
Yes.
But right now, what we need is a woke pope. What we need is more religious leaders that are just helping us push the ratchet forward. I loved your analogy, by the way. Push that ratchet forward just a click, right? If we can get a click forward, stop all this shit and get a click forward over the next decade, I will be fucking stoked. Would I be as stoked as I would be as if we got to get a good turn out of the ratchet? Of course not. I'd love a good turn out of the ratchet. I'd love 10 or 12 turns out of that ratchet. But if we can turn this fascist overreach into a click forward, then that is a win. And if that means to get that click forward, we got to align ourselves with the woke pope, I'm there.
Yeah. No, because again, we all of the things that we disagree with the Pope or with people that might be, like even some of the turfs that are, the LGB drop the T people. If they're anti-fascist, like again, we focus on the house that's burning down before we worry about the fact that, there's a leak over here and the floorboards are soggy. So like we can deal with that after. So we'll stick a pin in the other things, deal with getting that click forward and,
Sure.
not backsliding into essentially Nazi Germany again. Because like that's the goal right now. Like there are people, it is all about survival and not backsliding into the 30s where we actually do have these registries that are then used to, gather people and kind of put them together, concentrate them in an area, Um,
Yeah, and I think what Titan says here is important. There, no shame in being white if you're calling out people like her. Yeah, it's not. I don't want anybody to feel shame for who or what they are. Like I don't want anyone to feel shame for being what I don't. I don't. Excuse me. Feel like I'm thinking of like splash damage, like an AOA. I almost said, "Oh, did I just lose connection? Am I here?"
No, I can hear you.
Okay.
Your video just froze.
My video froze. Why didn't my video freeze? Huh.
Weird.
Super weird. All right. Well, we're about to end anyway, so we'll just look at my
Yeah.
we'll just look at my PFP. I don't know.
There we go.
I'm thinking of like splash damage from like D&D or something. Like I don't
Right?
feel splash shame when Matt Walsh like defends a racist. Like I don't feel shame for Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh, fuck, he should be ashamed of himself. But I don't
Mhm.
feel shame because he and I have similar melanin levels in our skin, right? Like I don't feel any. I mean, I feel shamed as a human being that he's a
Yeah.
fellow human being. But I think that one of the ways that we do move that ratchet forward is like transcending all of that. I'm using trans. Oh wow. But transcending kind of all of that and saying, no, we're just all human beings. We're all on the same side
Mhm.
from the people that are trying to kill us, trying to erase us, trying to marginalize us. We're all on the same side. And if we can make that argument cogently, especially with the help of a woke Pope, I think we can move that ratchet forward. Kitty, give me your final thoughts and then we'll get out of here.
Just I was using it as an example. I do agree with Porpoise and Zelrock that the drop the T people do tend to be more on the fashy side of things. But
Yes.
if there are people that might be okay with queer people, but not okay with trans people, and they're not like into the fascism, if they're anti-fascist, it was basically just an example of I would not want to break bread with this person under normal circumstances,
No.
but we are not in normal circumstances right now. So
Right.
if we can agree that fascism bad and we need to all coalesce together to push back against fascism, then we focus on that first, and then we can have our arguments about how they're absolutely stupid by not wanting to include trans people in the LGBTQIA plus umbrella, because
Yeah.
that's just
The
dumb.
GC, the gender critical people.
Yeah, the turfy people. Like
Right.
I want nothing to do with turfs.
Sure.
But
Sure. Me
if
either.
the
Yeah.
turf
100%.
happens if the turf happens to be anti-fascist, then I will set aside my dislike for their turfiness to fight
Right.
fascism, because that is a clear and present danger to everybody.
Right.
Not just queer people, not just trans people, but women, people of color. I mean,
Even the fascists themselves.
American citizen children are getting deported,
Exiled.
like exiled. Yes, exiled, because you can't deport an American citizen,
Can't deport an American citizen.
so they're getting exiled with their parent that is being deported.
Right.
Children with cancer, they're cutting, research into childhood cancer. They're cutting food stamps and Medicaid and soon Medicare. So many people are going to suffer and die because of this regime. So desperate times make for strange bedfellows, and as long as we can all agree that fascism is bad and we need to push against it, and we cannot allow eugenics, and we cannot allow people to have their civil liberties violated and trampled on, where you have American citizens getting exiled, or you have legal residents getting deported, or you have American citizens just getting locked up for weeks on end
Yeah.
in ICE detention centers because reasons, or you have people getting locked up because they dared protest against the treatment of Palestinians. Like, these are all clear and present dangers to everybody. So we have to deal with the house that is burning down first,
Right.
and then we can worry about rearranging the furniture.
As they say, if your ship's on fire and sinking, you put out the fire first.
Yes.
Want to thank you guys for watching. Maya made an excellent point. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but they're only on our side because they're in pain. I agree with you, Maya, but as long as they're on my side, we gotta.
We everybody we can to help us push back.
We have to win, or there won't be anything to fight for anymore.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you all next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night.